The Patriot Chapter 4, The Lives That Should Not Exist Victim Profile, Governor Calder Vance age. 76 former industrial tycoon, now provincial governor of Northbridge Province Calder Vance, was never meant to reach old age. Not according to the law. Not according to the victims. Not according to history. But history does not punish the powerful in real time, it waits. And sometimes it forgets. The 1980s, when Calder was still mortal before the wealth, before the titles, before the speeches and donations and televised apologies. Calder Vance was a rising industrial heir with dangerous connections. His family controlled shipping contracts tied to government exports. His influence did not come from him yet, but he learned quickly how to use it. And in that decade, many lives were broken. Incident 1, the night in the Capital District, a young clerk named Ramon Estrella accidentally spilled a drink on Calder during a private gathering. Witnesses said Ramon immediately apologized. He bowed. He tried to clean the mess himself. But Calder was already angry. Not loudly, calmly. That was what people remembered most. Ramon was escorted out by private security. Minutes later, gunfire echoed in an alley behind the venue. The official report stated, security response mishandled. Accidental discharge. One guard confessed. Case closed. But investigators later noted something strange. The bullet entered Ramon's forehead with precision. Too precise for panic. Too precise for accident. Incident 2, the factory union case months later. A labor organizer named Dario Ledesma led a protest against unsafe conditions in Calder-linked factories. He was found dead near a loading dock. His body showed signs of torture. The investigation never progressed. Why? Because witnesses began withdrawing statements. Some were paid, some were threatened, some simply disappeared. The case file was eventually archived under Unsolved Industrial Accident. Incident 3, the actress case. A rising theater actress, Elena Cruz, publicly rejected Calder's business proposal involving sponsorship tied to personal favors. 2 days later, she never arrived at rehearsal. Her body was discovered outside city limits. Cause of death undetermined trauma. No suspects identified. No motive recorded. Yet inside political circles, everyone understood. And everyone stayed silent. Because Calder's name was already becoming something else, not a man, a system. The escape from death in 1987, multiple charges were formally prepared. Witness testimonies existed. Evidence existed. Political pressure existed. And for a brief moment, justice almost happened. But Calder's family intervened. His father had ties to national leadership. High-ranking officials received calls. Files were reassigned. Witnesses were relocated. Prosecutors were replaced. And within months, the case collapsed. The final ruling, insufficient evidence for prosecution. But internally, one investigator wrote, "This is not a failure of evidence. This is a failure of courage." Calder Vance walked free. And the law learned something dangerous. It could be bent until it broke. Yuri's discovery when the notebook opened that night, Yuri expected another corrupt official. Instead, he saw something heavier. Not just a man. A timeline error. A life that should have ended 40 years ago. Then the names appeared, not one, but 5. Calder Vance, and below it, Evan Vance, Leora Vance, Darian Vance, Selene Vance, Harlan Vance. Yuri froze. 5 children. The notebook responded immediately, continuations of an unresolved crime. Yuri shook his head, no. They didn't do anything in the 80s. The response came slower this time, heavier. They exist because justice failed. The moral collapse begins. Yuri began investigating immediately. Not because he trusted the notebook. but because he feared it might be right. What he found was not innocence, but inheritance. Evan Vance had never known rejection. Contracts bent for him. Companies folded before opposing him. His decisions ruined thousands of workers, but always through legal loopholes, never visible violence. Leora Vance ran public welfare programs, but staff turnover was extreme. Former employees described emotional breakdowns caused by constant humiliation and psychological pressure. She never struck anyone, but she broke people in quieter ways. Darian Vance had a record sealed under national security protection. But retired officers whispered the same phrase: he solves problems permanently. Selene Vance was the most complicated. She had never harmed anyone directly, but she signed approvals. She validated systems. She enabled structure. And structure, Yuri realized, can be more dangerous than violence. Yuri's realization that night, Yuri returned to his apartment soaked in rain. The notebook lay open on the table. He didn't touch it immediately. For the first time, he hesitated not out of fear but disagreement. He is about to judge an entire bloodline. Finally, he whispered, if Calder died in the 80s, none of them would exist. The notebook responded, correct. Yuri's breath tightened. So they're being punished for being born. The pause. Then they are consequences of survival without justice. The punishment begins. It did not begin with death. It began with erasure. Records of Calder's legitimacy cases resurfaced. Old files reopened. News archives replayed headlines from the 80s. Victims' families reappeared in public discourse after decades of silence. Then Calder's children began losing something deeper than status. They began losing certainty of their own reality. Evan's business partners suddenly claimed they never trusted him. Leora's programs began rejecting her authorization codes. Darian's military records flagged him as unverified identity. Selene's entire career history began deleting itself from government databases. Not all at once, but gradually, as if history was correcting a mistake it had tolerated for too long. Calder Vance, the governor, did not suffer physically at first. He suffered observation. He watched everything he built collapse in reverse order of importance. Wealth first, then influence, then family, then identity, until he was no longer a governor, no longer a businessman, no longer even a respected name. Just a man sitting in a mansion that no longer recognized him as its owner. And for the first time in decades, Calder Vance understood something unbearable. He did not escape justice. He delayed it long enough to create collateral lives. Yuri's breaking point. Yuri closed the notebook for the first time in anger, not fear. Not obedience, anger. If this is justice, he whispered, then it doesn't care about truth. The notebook did not respond immediately. Then slowly, truth was never the requirement. Yuri stared at the words. And for the first time since receiving the notebook, he wondered if he was not the observer, but the next participant. End of chapter 4.